Provide your perspective on the town budget and the services presently provided by Matthews.
Currently, I think we're doing a fantastic job with our budget and the services that are provided. But we always have to think forward. And doing that, we must remain fiscally conservative. We must keep those services that are most important to our residents in the forefront. And those were mentioned earlier by one of the commissioners. And that's definitely for the safety and well-being of our citizens. And that would be police, fire, and medic must come first. I feel we also must pay them a salary that keeps the best in our town as well. So we have to make sure that we have got that rainy day fund, that we're setting a budget every year. We're making sure that people are being held accountable to stick to that budget.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Crosby, a new question. Representative Bill Brawley has introduced legislation that would allow towns to operate charter schools. Would you support the town opening and operating one or multiple charter schools? Why or why not?
Well, as far as education is concerned, we have a problem in CMS. We really do. 78% of our schools are currently overcrowded. Our teachers are overworked. The teacher-student ratio is just simply too high. As far as the bill that's being proposed by Mr. Brawley, I would support it for this particular reason. By taking children out of the public schools, you can lower that student-teacher ratio. By doing that, teachers can actually teach, which is something that I do not believe they have the ability to do now. For anyone who has graded a paper, it takes about 15 minutes to grade a paper with a quality amount of time. Take that, multiply it by 30, suddenly a 9-hour day job turns into a 12-hour day job. That's unreasonable for us to put that on our teachers. The charter school bill will take kids out of the classroom and put them into another situation where the student-teacher ratio can be lower and they can get the knowledge and the education that they deserve.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Burke, your question. How prepared should the town be for a railroad accident?
Well, since we have a major train track going through the center of our downtown, we should be very prepared. Train accidents are not unusual and they're not rare, and we need to have plans in place so that we know exactly what our services need to do if something like that should happen. So we do need to have a disaster plan in place, and we need to have regular practice of the disaster plan in order to keep our services on their toes so that if the worst happens, we're prepared for it and we can mitigate the damage.
Okay, and then I'm going to give you another question here. So your final question for the evening. What is the biggest problem facing Matthews, and how do you begin to solve it?
I think the biggest problem facing Matthews, just from a surface standpoint, is clearly the traffic. It takes a long time to get from one end of town to the other. I live over at the other side of Matthews, right where you come in the city limits, and it took me quite a while to get here tonight at rush hour. To mitigate that, to reduce our traffic, I do think we need to connect existing neighborhoods. We need to put plans in place so that people have back exits from their neighborhoods so they can take another route. I think we need to encourage our locals to use things like public transportation, to bike, to walk, and if we have more connectivity with greenways, we can have neighborhoods that can walk downtown. I would love to be able to walk downtown. Right now I can't because I have to come out of my neighborhood, go around 51 and back down John Street. So having these kind of back access ways in existing neighborhoods will take a lot of the traffic off the streets. Right now we have a lot of cul-de-sac neighborhoods that all pour out onto the same street, and I think that's really where a lot of our congestion comes from. And if we can't get commuters to go around our town, we're going to have to find a way for our local residents to have sneaky back exits and back ways to go so that they can get themselves to where they want to go faster.
10 seconds. Okay. Thank you. Ms. Crosby, your question. Describe how you would incorporate citizen feedback into your decisions.
We, as a government, and this is honestly on any level of government that you look at, the government is the sum of its people. It's simple. Without the people, there is no government to represent them. So when it comes to citizen feedback, for me personally, I would honestly take every opportunity to listen to every single person that's willing to talk to me, is the way I would see it. Your opinions are the most important opinions in the room currently. It is, we all live in this town, whether we're up behind this table or sitting down in the seats. We all have a specific vision. And the only difference between the people sitting behind this table and the people on the floor right now is that we just have to vote. But all of us have the vision. And your vision is equally as important as any vision up here of what Matthews is going to be or what it needs to be. So again, when it comes to listening to the citizens, it is our obligation to listen to the citizens. And if anyone would say otherwise, then that's not a representative government. That is a tyranny almost. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. Barbara, your question. Representative Bill Brawley has introduced legislation that would allow towns to operate charter schools. How or would you support the town opening and operating one or multiple charter schools? Why or why not?
Absolutely, I would. With education, just like anything else in life, there is never a one-size-fits-all. We need to give options for every child in every family in every community the education that they deserve. Charter schools are one avenue for that to happen. It would also relieve some of the current congestion that we have in our public schools. I am a proud product of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system, so I don't disown that at all. I'm proud of that. But it is so large, and many people would like other alternatives, and a charter system is a way to do that, to provide education and quality education that every child needs, and every teacher deserves to have a great work environment as well, and that would provide another opportunity for them.
Okay. Thank you very much. Sebastian, your question is, what should town leaders do to address traffic congestion within Matthews?
Thank you. I think we should be looking at more alternatives to deal with traffic, especially making sure as our town grows, we have to be investing more in the services, including public transportation. We are on the Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization. We do have buses coming down from that work the Charlotte transportation system as well, the CATS buses. We do have possible future plans for the light rail. How can we use all of those resources to make sure that we can alleviate the congestion that we have here in town? And I think that's something that we can continuously to work on improving. We need to be vocal, just as we've been vocal to NCDOT against the John Street project to make sure that we can preserve our downtown. We need to be vocal about making sure that we get funding for the light rail project to make sure to ease the traffic and the congestion. Work on better bus routes that can access all parts of town. You can't get a bus on this part of town, at least where I live. It's 40 minutes walking to the closest bus stop, and I don't even have sidewalks to the closest area. When we're talking about even crossing 74 from here, there's no sidewalk between 51, Samuel, there's no crosswalks, and the bridge over here does not even have sidewalks on it. So as somebody mentioned earlier, riding the bike across 74, I've done that too. It's dangerous.
10 seconds.
And I think we can improve all of that to decrease the traffic and increase accessibility to pedestrian traffic and public transportation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next question out of the hat. What should the town address, or excuse me, how should the town address overcrowding of area schools?
Well, I think one of the obvious answers is we need to increase the size of our schools, and that means not continually adding trailers to the sides of our schools, but actually building brick and mortar schools. We have some areas set aside in the town that would be appropriate, I think, to build additional schools, and that's what we're going to have to look towards going forward. I, along with several other commissioners, are very upset to see the continuing, never-ending sunsetting that never comes of trailers, for instance, at Elizabeth Lane Elementary. I made the comment, I'm a graduate of South Mecklenburg High School. There were trailers at that school when I was there that are still there. They've been there for 35, 40 years. So we need to build more schools. The schools are overcrowded. We got a lot of people moving here. We need to increase the schools that are available. I'm not necessarily in favor of charter schools, however. It's something I want to learn more about. I'm not going to totally disregard it, but I know that charter schools take money from our public schools, and that is a concern I have. I would hate to see lots of funding going away from our public schools, and then you're going to have haves and have-nots. Those that are lucky enough to get into charter schools may have a great education, and those that are stuck in public schools where the funding is less, maybe not so much. So, not going to totally disregard
10
it,
seconds.
but I think that's something we need to continue to look at, and at least initially, I'm not in favor of charter schools. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right. Mr. Melton, what steps should Matthews take to becoming more bicycle and pedestrian friendly?
I think first of all, my initial answer would be to get out of our own way. We've got a bicycle and pedestrian plan that was developed, I think, back when Ralph was our public works director, maybe back when he was our town manager. We spent a lot of time, effort, and money putting research and researching opinions and getting input from experts to develop that pedestrian and bicycle improvement plan. And I think we need to, every decision we make, whether it be to adopt multifamily properties or approve those petitions or any other zoning case or case that comes before us, I think we need to make sure we take that into consideration. That plan was developed for a very specific reason, to make Matthews more pedestrian and bike friendly. And I think we always need to remind ourselves, when any decision we make, what impact will it make on that plan, and most importantly, don't let that plan gather dust. I think we need to make sure we pull that plan out and refresh it every couple of years and remind ourselves that we have that plan and use it. We've got a playbook, and we need to make sure that we implement it whenever possible.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Miller, your question: how should town leaders balance modern day growth with preserving the historic aspects of Matthews?
I think Matthews doesn't have a lot of large open spans any longer that hasn't already been approved or planned in its development stages. The big expanses that come to mind are Axe Plantation Estates, the new development between Fullwood and John Street, or the Erickson Windsor Run property, which is over by McKee and Pleasant Plains. The rest of the land is mostly infill, one plot of land, another plot of land. And we need to, on the little land that we have left, we need to work with infill type projects. Those type of projects do lend themselves to housing, more housing downtown so that our businesses can flourish, etc. Other than that, most of the large expanses of land have already been planned out, and so that's how I feel about that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Query. How can Matthews retain its small town charm in light of a fast-growing population?